Hi there. These are your habitable zone notes. So I want to start with basic and go all the way up to seventh grade information about habitable zones. So I want to start with right here. You're going to see this picture frequently when describing the habitable zone, but I'll come back to that. I just wanted to make sure it's at the beginning and the end of your notes. I want to start with this right here. When you see this, you see some stars, you see maybe some kind of a planet there, and you see this like light, very faint red line. I have the enormous area that begins where Earth's atmosphere ends contains celestial bodies such as planets and stars. So this is going to be the definition for space. So you see that red line right there. That is, representing the atmosphere of Earth. And once you pass that, then you get into outer space, which is all the area above the atmosphere. And it uses the word enormous right there. Means gigantic. Sometimes it could mean endless. A higher level word that I liked a lot was vast, V-A-S-T, but yeah, the big area outside of the Earth's atmosphere is outer space, but we typically refer to it as space. And then you see this picture, and you should know automatically, and it gives you the title, but it's made of the sun, the 8 planets, satellites, asteroids, meteors, comets, and other celestial bodies. Celestial bodies are just things that are in space, which includes usually stars and planets, and sun, the biggest star is the sun. So this is our solar system. And when we have people that go into space, they're given a special term, but it's a person who is trained to travel in space. They have a ton of training to go through, and those people are called an astronaut. And here, this is actually the Hubble telescope, which is traveling in space, getting information for us. Takes amazing pictures, detailed pictures of other planets, what's going on out there in our galaxy. Definition: observations and investigations of outer space by both humans and by robotic spacecraft. This would be a space exploration. So the robotic things like Hubble telescope, there's many other things, other satellites and other telescopes that are up there that are acquiring information for us and exploring space for us, so they can stay up there way longer and with less things that they need to maintain working order. Humans are sitting in space because we need to have other things tested. So we have here an astronaut in space. And so when we send not a robot to do space exploration, we send humans, we call it a manned. See MAN is there, manned space exploration. Humans exploring space versus just equipment exploring. Oh, there it is again, manned. Twice you have it. Humans exploring space versus just, that's what I wanted to put there. This is actually when it's, when we just have equipment exploring space. This is an unmanned. So when it's unmanned, we don't have any humans in space. We just send the telescopes or the other equipment to do the exploring. So to succeed in staying alive when the conditions around you are difficult, I just want to make sure you know that word, survival. To be able to survive in space, it does take so much training to know how to take care of yourself, and equipment equipment helps to keep you alive while you're in space. So our question here, what we're getting to, is how do humans survive in space? Because they're going to be under the way different conditions than what we have on Earth, because typically it's just because we have our atmosphere that is there to protect us. So what they have to survive is what we call accommodations. Accommodations, basically, they're equipment that allows an individual to survive the conditions while in space. So here's some examples of accommodations. You can see you still got to sleep when you're in space, but you don't have gravity, so they have these cocoons that they strap in to sleep, and they have all the things that they need. They have freeze dried food, because the liquid in space just divides up into droplets everywhere and floats away. So they have to have freeze dried food. They have to have exercise equipment, because your muscles actually start to atrophy. It means they shrink because they're not being used, because there's no weight, no gravity to provide a force for you to move. So they have to use their exercise equipment. They have to have communication back to Earth. They have to have communication with each other. They have to have a place for staying clean, going to the bathroom. It's all very different, and they have to receive the training and know how to use everything. They have a space suit to provide their oxygen and other protections, radiation in space from the sun, because there's no atmosphere to protect them. This is the International Space Station, also known as the ISS. There's an app that I use. I know there's more than one, but I use the Skyview app, and you can help you pinpoint things in space, in the night sky. And one of them, they will show you where the Hubble telescope is at times when it's close by. It'll also show you the ISS when it's flying over. But this is a big space station that astronauts around the world use. And in fact, the 2 astronauts just stayed there, I think it was 100 days, and recently, over the summer, until just recently, they stayed there, did some testing and studying, and then came back. But this is their quarters in here. These are solar panels to help it keep energized while it's in space. But this is a neat diagram that tells you the different compartments and what they have on the International Space Station. All the accommodations they have to stay alive and do their studying and training and experimenting while they're up there, because you have astronauts that stay sometimes over a year. They stay a couple years sometimes up in that space station, so they need to have it like their own living space. All right, composition of our atmosphere. What does that mean? Because that is gonna play a big part of our survival on Earth, in that when the astronauts go to space, in a manned space exploration, they have to have the atmosphere I can't think of the word. They have to have an atmosphere there, and so many. They have to have their space shuttle that helps them survive. They have their space helmet, that gives them protection and oxygen. But what makes up our atmosphere that makes it worth that we can have life here? Well, this diagram shows you that you have nitrogen. 78% of our atmosphere is nitrogen, and only about 21% is oxygen. The other part of our atmosphere are all these other gases. You have argon and xenon and neon and hydrogen, helium, krypton, carbon dioxide, water vapor is also in there as well. But what our atmosphere does for life is it offers us protection, and it offers protection from the dangers of space, because you have particles in space that, from comets and meteors and equipment actually that could fall back down to the Earth, and a lot of things just burn up in our atmosphere as it's going through. And then you have also protection from the UV rays from the sun. The other thing the atmosphere does is provides air for us to breathe. It has our oxygen in it. We don't need a lot of oxygen, as you can see, 21%. It contains elements needed for life. And then lastly, the atmospheric pressure is just right for us to have life. It's not, and this sounds a little dark, but the pressure, it helps our cells not to explode. Okay, and then next, I want you to know this term. It's called proximity. It's a key word in knowing why we have life on Earth. It means distance from something else, proximity. Earth's proximity from the sun is why Earth is in the habitable zone. So we're coming now back to the word habitable. Earth's proximity from the sun is why Earth is in the habitable zone. If you see in the word habitable, I know you see the word habitat, but it's talking about like habit, but it's talking about the word habitat, a place where life lives. So, what is the habitable zone? What is it? It is the location where an orbiting planet is in a perfect location for liquid water to exist. Liquid water is essential for life on Earth. It's also, I want to tell you this before we move on, is the habitable zone is also known as the Goldilocks zone. Because Earth is in, see this ring right here? That is the habitable zone of space. And Earth is in the habitable zone because it's not too hot, it's not too cold for liquid water to be here. We have tons of it. Other places, other planets, other moons in the space they've found, they found ice, but it's always ice. And so that means it's too extreme of a temperature for life to exist as we know it. So why is Earth habitable? It is because the temperature is just right for keeping water from freezing or boiling and evaporating away. So our water doesn't leave the earth as it's in a process going through the water cycle. We have the water cycle to keep replenishing the water over and over and over again. And it's not freezing, so we can always have it. And we also have the presence of an atmosphere is why we can have life on Earth. We already talked about those things that the atmosphere provides for us right up here. Oops. These things right here are the things, the atmosphere does for us. Last few things is that cells are mostly made of water. That's why liquid water is very essential, because most things, and I'm not talking about just humans, I'm talking about plants, I'm talking about insects, things in the ocean, they are mostly made of water. Life on Earth relies on water to exist. So because Earth is in this habitable zone, which is this area around the sun, the circle that goes all the way around is perfect location for liquid water to exist, the habitable zone. As you can see, Venus is going to be too hot, Mars too cold, but Earth is just right. And the reason they call it the Goldilocks zone is because it takes after the Goldilocks and the Three Bears story, where she goes into the bears' cottage after they went out on a walk. She tries their beds, their chairs, their food, and Mama Bears, Papa Bears, and Baby Bears, and one is always too hard or soft or hot, and one is too cold or lumpy or too soft, but Baby Bear's stuff is always just right. And the bears come home to find her sleeping in Baby Bear's bed, I do believe, but the temperature is just right for Earth to have liquid water, why we can have life on Earth. So those are your habitable zone notes. You are to write down important topics or screenshot any of this and put it into your digital notebook, or if you're handwriting things, write down the key points of these notes, the things that you definitely need to know if you don't already know, like definitely this last page about, starting with the composition of atmosphere on and habitable zone. Put those in your notebooks for your notes, and that is it.